You're listening to Breakaway Wealth, the show designed to help you build wealth faster, think bigger, and break out of the herd. Now, here's your host, Jim Oliver. Before we jump into today's show, we have some exciting news to share with you. Our brand new online community platform is now live. Get access to free on-demand, in-depth training courses on topics like infinite banking, cryptocurrency, real estate investing, and much more. Just go to community.createtailwind.com. That's community.createtailwind.com, or check out the show notes of this episode to find the direct link to request to join the community. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and with us today, back on the show, is our great friend, Brian Bogert. Welcome, Brian.
Jim, man, I'm so happy to be back with you. It was one of those things. You're one of those people that we just instantly connect again, even after months of not talking. You're a good human, and I'm happy to be here today.
Absolutely. Brian, for people that, if you haven't heard Brian's first appearance on the show about a year or so ago, go back and listen again, because it's a great episode, and Brian really brought an amazing amount of energy. But I want you to just, before we jump in, recap your story and kind of how you became Brian Bogert.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny is there's a whole lot that have shaped me into the Brian Bogert I am today. But what's also funny is I am more authentic to who I was when I was born than my story actually took me away from a lot of years. So I'll give a really abbreviated version. But when I was 7, I was run over by a truck and my left arm was torn from my body. It was reattached, had 24 surgeries. It created a whole bunch of areas in my life that I shut off and shut down. Rebroke it again when I was 20, almost lost it again. Went 10 months with it hanging by my side. I went through 7 surgeons who were afraid to touch me. And ultimately, if you look at the pattern and progression of my life, I had a lot of early success in the risk management, play benefit consulting world, chasing money, because that's what I believed was always going to solve the problems. And then when I had all the money and the things, I also realized that I had it all, but I was empty inside, even though my bank account was full. And the last 12 to 13 years have been a process and journey of recovery, repair, and healing to a place to where I am today. But today, I'm known as the 1-second psychologist, a heart surgeon without a blade, and the creator of the waste to wealth methodology, which are 5 pillars guaranteed for any individual or organization to identify and remove the waste they don't even know exists within. And we teach a lot of those concepts.
So I'll tell you, I don't know how many times I've told somebody about I'm a heart surgeon without a blade, right? But so I was going to go there, but since you already said that, no, but that's okay, because here's where I want to go with that, because I like what you just said. And, in my book and on podcast episodes, I've talked about my upbringing, and I think even on your show. And it's funny because you become known for something, right? But then what you realize is that, I probably said this on your show, but I say this a lot, and I stole this, or I modeled it, is the way I like to prefer to say it, is I've given up all hope for a better past, right?
Oh, yeah.
But Dan Sullivan, great coach, he always says your future is bigger than your past, right? Mm-hmm. And that would go in one ear and out the other. And I'm slow, because when Zig Ziglar said, hey, help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want more, I said, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to get on that someday. But I just didn't listen to it in my 20s, right? And then in my 30s, I finally grew up and decided I would start just doing it. And the rest is history. That past, being known. So if your future is bigger than your past, then you want to be known for your future, not just for your past, right? So talk about what you talk about, that transformation, or what you've come to realize, that you're more than this story. Yeah. You're more than the overcoming this adversity, which everybody marvels at, because they're like, oh man, 24/7 surgeries. I mean, who brought you to those things? And I already know who the answer to that question. And probably who fought to help you, all that way, and to recover, to say, hey, I'm bigger than that. Yeah. I'm more than that, because what I've learned all along the line is this. So share some of that.
Yeah. So what I would tell you is that I actually didn't want to be known for my arm. Yeah. Right. It was something that I knew the shock and the awe elements of it. And it was always something that was like the primary topic of discussion, just because it was visually something that people would identify and ask about. In my last career, I really didn't talk about it a whole lot, right? Like it wasn't relevant to what I was doing in that world, except within a few situations or within those relationships, but it was never something that I led with. And then when I became a coach and a speaker, I was like, well, this is a part of my story that's going to get attention and it's going to be credible for people, but it's not just about the story. It's about the lessons that have been extracted from it, right? That are relatable and connectable to other people and their own unique experiences. And so by virtue of that, I've consistently done this long enough now that sometimes it's funny. I'll go somewhere and get on stage and they actually don't know my story. They don't know about my arm. They know about what we're doing in the world. Yeah. And so that to me is like really amazing. And that transition has happened in the last probably 18 to 24 months, which is interesting because now we're starting to create more shock and awe content because it does get attention, and attention gets people into our world, which allows us then to do the work that we do. So where have I gotten to be very well known? Those nicknames, Heart Surgeon Without a Blade and 1 Second Psychologist, I didn't make those up. Those were given to me by either direct clients or masterminds that I've participated in. I have a really unique ability to see people, to see and feel where their pain is, whether they even realize it's there, to recognize and identify where and how people are protecting themselves. And then ultimately, because of who I am, I also have a very objective and non-judgmental view in how I see people, which means that despite seeing the pain and despite seeing the protection, I also see their power and their potential. See, I judge people more based on what they do versus what they've done. And so even that light of what you're talking about, that our future is really where we want to live and exist, that's what I help people do ultimately, is to see themselves more clearly and to systematically help them start to break the historical patterns that we call trash from your past. The trash from your past is tied to emotional triggers, behavioral patterns, and environmental conditioning that have created a set of beliefs that your life is only further validated. The cellular memory gets activated in moments, causing you to react to things that have nothing to do with what's right in front of you. I help people break those down, heal the pain, so they can shed the associated layers of armor and ultimately step into their power and potential. Now, how we do that, there's a whole variety of modalities that I have learned and utilized in my own sense, but I'm becoming really well known for compressing decades into days and showing people literally in minutes and moments what transformation can look like. And that's what I'm starting to be known for now.
You know, I love that because, you said something, and I've read a lot about PTSD, trauma, complex PTSD, and there's a great book by Peter Walker that's on complex PTSD. I can't remember exactly, maybe it's just called Complex PTSD, but it's a purple book, Peter Walker, and he says, it's not just fight or flight when we have trauma, it's fight, flight, fawn, and freeze.
Yep, it's
right?
all four.
And then in his book, he teaches you, I'm not saying this is all the techniques that there are, but he teaches you 13 ways, that not that you have to be able to do all of them, but you have to be able to do some of them. When those triggers happen and you have these reactions, you have to have something in your toolbox to be able to manage that.
Yep.
Or you're going to fly off the handle, you're going to ruin your relationships, you're going to damage trust, et cetera, et cetera. So those are your choices, right? And so I love that, because there was something I saw the other day that said that you can actually pass down your trauma to your children,
the DNA, right?
And through the DNA. And so that blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yep.
This does kind of explain some things to me with some of my adult children. Well, and I say, great, that's my fault too. But and I say that a little bit tongue in cheek because, hey, it doesn't really matter. I can't change it, right? It is what it is, right? If I had a friend, 55 years old, and he has a quadruple bypass. He has a trainer, eats good, he's not fat, everything else. You know what? He was passed down these genetics.
Bingo.
And if he would have died at 55, this guy accomplished a lot. Right. So would you have said when you're 30, no, I don't want, I don't want these 25 years. No, you wouldn't. And because there are certain guys out there that, and I'm going somewhere with this, that have great genetics. They're going to live to 100. They're not going to accomplish anything. Right. But they're going to live to 100. So Maybe talk about that a little bit, Brian, because the one thing that I see and I feel in your energy is there's no standing still, standing pat. You said this, hey, I had money, I had all this stuff, but there was something missing. Something like, if I don't have a vision of what I want, and how many people do you talk to that don't have a vision? They can't create it.
Yep.
They don't know what they want to do, what they want to be, what they want to have. They just can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
What prevents somebody from that, and how do you help them?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a lot of factors that go into it, so it's not a singular thing. What I want to acknowledge and talk about is that, yes, it's about ultimately starting to help people raise their level of consciousness to the unconscious patterns that have dictated their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a client that I just wrapped up a 4-month intensive process with. She's 52 years old, and I can tell you that collectively, she has probably more unique elements of trauma that have impacted her in her life than almost anybody I've ever worked with. But at 52 years old, for the very first time in her life, she's now living her life based on her terms, her standards, and for her. See,
Wow, good for
so
her.
many times people are in these positions where they live based on the standard of what their dad told them was important. They learn and get conditioned down this path of what is and what isn't right. But think about it. We're born as our brightest, most authentic burning lights will ever be. Anybody who's been around kids knows this. There's raw, there's curiosity, there's wonder, there's energy, right? And then what do we start doing as parents, teachers, coaches, employers? You should do this, you shouldn't do that. You should be this, you shouldn't be that. You should want this, you shouldn't want that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Should is a shame-based word, and it starts funneling us down into this box because should implies whoever we are, whatever we're doing, it's not good enough till we live inside this box based on who the world has told us who to be. To your point, most people don't even understand their vision, but they aren't even clear on what they even want because they've never actually given themselves the permission to even consider that because they've lived their lives for other people based on other people's standards, right? I am one that learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance, which also meant that some of my shame was tied because I believed that my value and my worth in any given relationship was contingent upon what I did for other people, not based on who I am. And so oftentimes what we're really trying to do is get people to slow down long enough to start to actually extract the intellectual, emotional, and physical narratives that were formed in moments that created these beliefs originally. Right? I'll give a great example. I have a client right now who works in our mastermind. She is a phenomenal creative. She right now has a multiple different social media channels that are averaging about 7 million views per week. Okay. Wow. Here's the crazy part. In the very first session working with her in our group capacity, we identified that her greatest trauma is actually connected to her creative profession. And it happened in a moment when she was 6 that told her that she was never going to be good enough as a creative, that it wasn't going to be seen, she wasn't going to be understood, she wasn't going to be connected through it. And therefore, still to this day, years later, she doesn't fully understand her value and her worth. 6 months with working with her, she just landed her first influencer contract that's also got an affiliate arrangement, $50,000 contract basically for 2 posts a month. And she gets rev share because we helped her step into her value, understand it, unpack all the layers of protection that had caused her to not see it. And ultimately, she's stepping into what she's capable of now, just starting to scratch the surface of what she's going to be able to do. But I have 100+ stories like this where people don't even realize what's keeping them blocked, because here's the truth. The second we don't feel safe, protected, seen, understood, or connected, which are the 4 things we all want in the human experience, we protect ourselves. And so the second we protect ourselves, we actually disconnect ourselves from who we are and what we want in this world, which causes us to react in moments that we don't know. Personal example. My wife used to say something as simple as this. Hey, honey, what are you going to do with the kids this weekend? But my shame and my anger filter would cause me to hear it this way. Hey, honey, you've not done enough to be a good husband and father here recently. So what are you going to do to make up for it this weekend? Then what do? I pay attention and I recognize that my chest puffs, my heat waves over, my heart starts racing. What do? I rattle off the 10 things I've done in the last 4 days to show her I'm a good husband and father. Now I've created damage that I have to go create repair with when that wasn't even what she asked. And so how often are people protecting themselves and diluting what's actually being presented to them and reacting because they're so conditioned to need to defend, justify, and ultimately try to escape judgment and criticism from this world?
You just nailed one, because this is the one that I was going to say. And you would say, she'd say, well, don't be defensive. And you'd say, I'm not being defensive.
Exactly.
Right. And
Exactly.
and I think I see like that happen so often, and I have experienced it myself multiple times, too many times to count. It's so there's something that I really trying to think of the right way to ask the question, to have the things that people can do. So like, if you think of your unique ability, and you think of unique offerings, right? And unique gifts that we all get different gifts, and that's cool. Is just listening to you for the last 15 minutes or so, is that intuition of being able to see something, having a system, knowing and having the knowledge in the background to, hey, I've done this before, right? If you're a heart surgeon with the scalpel, without a scalpel, there's only so many things that happen to the heart, right? It's not that complicated, right? I like when people say, hey, it's not brain surgery. There's only so many things that can happen to your brain. It's not that complicated. I mean, neurosurgeons, okay, I know I'm oversimplifying it, but and you're brilliant, right? Way smarter than me, but I guarantee there's only so many things that can happen to that thing, your brain, right? Now, to your heart and how you feel, there's a lot of things that can happen, but there's only so many reactions. So I want you to talk about, because I know that, talk about how you work with people and the different programs that you offer. Because if I'm sitting there in the audience listening right now, and I'm not where I want to be in my career, not where I want to be in my spiritual life, my love life, my health, I know, I'm just telling you, Brian can help in some way with some of those, all of those. And so like, I want people to be sitting there going, well, I probably 4 months intensive. I don't know if I can do that or want to do that or whatever. It's kind of like telling somebody, hey, a friend of mine went through a divorce, and she went away and unplugged for 30 days. Didn't have her phone, didn't have any electronics. Like, I just want to tell you, that almost threw me into a panic attack, right? Like, well, I couldn't do that. Now, I don't want anybody in the audience to sit here, I can't do that. Right. Talk about how you work with people.
Yeah. So I'm a keynote speaker. So that's one place that I just acknowledge, because I can move rooms of people in a similar sense. And that's one of the things that I enjoy to do. But in terms of working with people to come into our world, there's a few different categories. Okay. We're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as we can by reducing the level of suffering that exists on this planet, largely of which I believe exists internal. So we have a low level program. I say it's low level in terms of financial investment. It's an $88 a month program that we give 30 days for free to anyone. It's what we call our rapid fire coaching community. And what that is we ultimately do hot seat coaching, teaching on a variety of topics, personal to business. And there's little structure, but it's a scalable place. And why it's important is it's zero or very low barrier of entry for people to get access to the help that they need. And we do 3 times a month on Zoom, so they can decide when they jump in. We have a mastermind that we work with. It's also a one-to-many type approach. It's a 1-year commitment. We're typically working with service-based entrepreneurs who aren't getting the reach or creating the impact that they want. And we're helping them not only understand the marketing, the messaging, as well as some of the systems to position things, but we utilize our waste to wealth philosophy. And so the whole goal is, within the 12 months, my job is to make sure that they become the person capable of running the business that they've always desired. Right. And we're doing this in a really cool way. I just referenced one of the big wins that we had with someone in there. And then I have multiple different ways that I work with people one-on-one. Intensive is something that I referenced because I call intensive, that's like the deep dive, the deepest and the hardest and the heaviest hitting work that I do. I only have a certain number of spots for that, but there are other levels that we can engage on a one-to-one that we can really compress time for people. And again, get them moving in directions that they don't even anticipate. Funny enough, I had somebody hire me for a very specific project on our lowest level of coaching. And the whole point was to help her with a contract negotiation with a co-branded opportunity within her business. She ultimately ended up getting the deal the week after we signed the contract, before we'd had our first session. So she comes on and she's like, well, I don't really know what to do. And I signed a contract, like we're in this place. So I said, okay, well, let's just talk. Within 15 to 20 minutes, what we realized is she doesn't have clarity or energetic connection to any of the 3 revenue sources that are in her world today. And she's still carrying a bunch of shame connected to an injury, a brain injury that caused such delays for her for a number of years that she still doesn't see herself as the person that used to develop all the wealth that she did in real estate and other venues. So now we're engaged in a contract, just helping her down the path. Our last coaching call literally was me with her while she was at a Porsche dealership, deciding between which level of car to purchase. And she didn't see herself as valuable enough or worthy enough to actually make the purchase, even though she has the financial resources. My job wasn't to convince her to buy a car. It was to help her realize that what she's about to invest in is for her and is also going to have a direct correlation, because she also sells $10 to $15 million homes. And guess what? The buyers of those properties do care what she drives, even though I don't. Right.
They know the difference between a GTS and a turbo.
100%.
And by the way, I always say the GTS is the best value, but if you want the best, then get the turbo, right?
Bingo.
If it's 75 grand difference, then it's 75 grand difference. If you're buying that car, maybe it doesn't matter. If it does matter to you, then get the GTS. But to me, that's the best. That's the sweet spot of the Porsche line.
100%.
Not that I'm a car guy,
but again, it was one of those things where it was even just helping her think through the difference between the cost of two vehicles and the $28,000 of difference to get the high-end model, which was the color and had all the features that she wanted, is a rounding error spread over 5 years of payments. And it's one additional property a year that she would sell to completely pay for not only the difference, but more of it, right? It's so, as it relates to relationships, health, we talk about wealth. It's beyond monetary riches. So we do business, we do strategy, but here's the reality. It's also relationships, time, and health. So my job is to help people actually step into the people that they've always wanted to be, have believed that they're capable of being, but yet haven't been able to reach out and actually just grab it.
Yeah, no, I love that. All right, Brian. So we're going to put in the show notes all the different ways to see your social media, get a hold of you, to get to your website, to get signed up. Look, for $88, check it out. I mean, seriously, we need to do
free for 30 days.
Class.
Jump in and check it out for free for 30 days. That's what we offered everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for free. Okay, so like, go check it out, because you don't know. I had this conversation the other day about, when you change, when you start off, nobody started off at 22 years old professionally and is where they thought they would be. I don't care if you're 35, 55, 75, no one knew. It's always not a straight road. So you have to reach out, you have to educate yourself, and you might have these 3 emotional things that you need to remove so that you can have the wealth, the health, and the life that you want. And all I would tell you is that I love what Brian does. He's an authentic guy. And if you don't go check this stuff out, it's to your own peril. So, Brian, normally I ask people two things, and I've already asked you one, and I don't know what book you said, which was, I always say, if God came down from heaven and only allowed you to retain the knowledge of one book that you've read in your life, what would it be? Do you have any idea what you said?
I don't, but it's probably the same thing that I said before. I don't know if it's the exact one, but it's Mindset by Carol Dweck.
You know what? It was Mindset. Now that you say that, I do remember that. But I love that book, and we're going to go with that again. The last thing I'm going to ask you is, what's the best advice anybody's ever given you?
That's a great question. I don't think I've been asked that question maybe ever. You know what? I think it comes from my dad. It's probably the greatest lesson that my dad ever taught me. He says, no matter what, always in life, you will always have a minimum of 2 choices. They both might be shitty choices, right? You could be held at gunpoint. Your choice is to hand over all your worldly possessions or get shot. But the point is that stepping into and owning that choice is ultimately what matters. And we always have a minimum of 2 choices. So if you don't like where you're at, choose something different.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. Great advice, Dad. So, Brian, I really do want to, we've been doing more and more master classes with our community. I want to get some of your courses on our community. I normally would say this after the podcast, but I'm putting you on the spot because I want to do this, and I'm going to have somebody reach out to you. I'm not even going to ask you. I'm just going to have somebody reach out because I love what you're doing out there and how you're helping people. I love the 1 billion lives goal, and anything that we can do to help you with that. We want to be part of that. Talk about mindset. First of all, thank you so much for being on. We're going to end this podcast like we always do, audience, with the great words of Earl Nightingale and The Strangest Secret, which ties right into mindset, ties right into attitude, ties right into visions. Again, Brian, thank you so much for being on.
Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about.
Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to hear what was shared on today's podcast. If you are looking to discover new wealth building strategies, then go to community.createtailwind.com. That's community.createtailwind.com to join our free online community and get access to free courses and in-depth training videos designed to help you build wealth and break away from the herd. Click the link in the show notes to access the community today. Thanks again for listening.